Welcome, listeners, to another episode of CRE Unplugged. I am your co-host, Nadine, and I am joined by none other than my right hand, my PropTech soulmate, my brother from another mother, the incomparable, the incredible, Ryan Elazari. Ryan, it's been a minute, I feel like, friend. How you doing?
I'm doing great, and thank you so much for all those titles. You're making me feel so great about myself today.
It's all about the mindset, Ryan. It's all how we
Right.
talk to ourselves, right? It's all about the
Yes.
language that we use. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like it's been a minute since we've sat down and done this, even though it really hasn't. But we've both been on the road. We've hit up some great events over the last month. And I came to New York, and you and I had the pleasure of going to the Momentum AI event by Reuters, which we stepped out of our commercial real. We stepped out a little bit. We stepped out of commercial real estate. This was focusing on enterprise and finance and FinTech and healthcare tech, all on the AI side. And so even though I feel like that was a while ago, that was just a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
That event, I know you and I have talked about this a lot, but let's tell our listeners, you know, you and I do a lot of panels. We go to a lot of real estate events talking about AI and prop tech and trends and best practices and implementation and change management. And everything that we heard at Momentum was no different than what we're talking about and what we're hearing on the real estate side. And we were listening to the CIOs and the chief data and analytic officers at JP Morgan Chase, CVS Health. I mean, big enterprise companies doing the exact same thing that we're talking about on the real estate side. And I found that really enlightening, right? And we're talking about AI right now, by the way. We're talking about
Right.
AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's really interesting because I went and moderated a panel that was hosted by Monday.com and
Yeah.
Eligio, focusing on e-construction. And
Hmm.
yeah, same topics, change management. How are we going to get leaders to kind of promote and get our employees to embrace technology? Why are leaders so afraid to help their new hires train and develop them into learning different technologies or learn how the inner workings of the companies, right? I mean, I think we hear about this all the time in real estate technology. Now you're hearing it in construction technology. Then you're hearing it in financial services and enterprise level. So
Yeah.
doesn't it give you some comfort that that's kind of the case right now, that
It
everyone's kind
does.
of speaking the same language?
Yeah, it does 100%. And all the panels I moderated at Momentum, and you were there, the theme was constant. It's not about the tech or the tools, it's about the people. And I feel like I've been a broken record about this for a long
Yeah.
time. But almost every single chief data and analytics officer said the winning equation is somewhere around 80% people and culture and 20% tech and tools. And that's the message we got to keep talking about, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's rushing, especially like, people are freaking out. I don't know what Notion is, and I don't know how to use Claude or whatever. That's fine. The tools matter. But if we're not talking about massive cultural shifts, and change management and leadership being bought in, you're already behind. And so, yeah, it was super comforting. It was super comforting and validating to hear that, and then I shot down to Austin after that, where I had the pleasure of keynoting CRE, their Austin chapter, had a great event, Elevate. Focus was AI and innovation. And I make it a point, as when I get up there, to not talk much about the tools, but to talk
Right.
about the mindset shifts, right? And having to be more human centric and people centric as an industry as we kind of move forward in all of this. And so that was great. And just talking to the folks down, well, Austin's such a great town. I know exactly what I would be doing if I spent more time in Austin. I would be eating tacos all day, every day. I told you I almost missed my flight because I decided to get
Yeah.
tacos one last time.
Oh, I love Austin. I went there on like my first trip with my wife was out in Austin, and then I also had my bachelor party there.
Yeah,
So we went jet skiing on Lake Austin, which was a lot of
yeah,
fun. And
yeah. That's
got to eat
awesome.
some great food. The I told you the secret to Austin is not it's having tacos at at the taco trucks. Those are the good ones,
I know.
not the
I
ones
know.
at the stores.
I know, I know. I
Yeah.
think that's like a really good rule of thumb. I love food trucks. I love food trucks, by the way. But that was great. But yeah, it was good. You and I were out there. We were talking to a lot of people these last few weeks, and it was very interesting to come back, share notes, and see the similarities in that kind of going forward. So but speaking of prop tech and founders and startups, we got a great guest today that we're gonna dive in.
Yeah, I'm really excited for our guest. We're going to be talking about the tech investment space and how quickly it's evolving in response to market pressure. So, with capital tightening and expectations being higher, there's like a real shift
Mm-hmm.
happening in how
Mm-hmm.
we're evaluating and adopting technology in real estate, in construction, and in the financial sector.
Right. But at the same time, which is what we were talking about, AI is lowering the cost to build and actually scale this tech, right? So even in a cautious market, we're seeing this totally new wave of startups emerging, leaner, faster, laser focused on solving actual pain points in the industry.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to why we're going to be talking to Alon Gorbonos. We're going to dig deep into early stage funding in the prop tech, ConTech, and FinTech sector. So it's not just about chasing hype, it's about
Mm.
building tools so you have staying power.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to this interview. Alon brings a very rare blend of operational know-how, which is so important, with early stage vision. And so he's helping shape the future, investing in one pragmatic innovation at a time.
Yeah, so this conversation isn't just going to be about technology and where technology is going. It's going to be about who's steering it and how we stay grounded in value while we're pushing this momentum forward.
I'm very excited for this. Shall we get to it?
Let's get to it. And with that, I would like to welcome our guest, Alon Gorbonos, founder and general partner of RE Angels. Alon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, and it's a big pleasure and looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, I really enjoyed our conversation out in Blueprint, and we're really happy to get you now on to the podcast. Alon, you made this move from Israel to New York in 2010. You were working at McKinsey and have a really traditional investment background. So, what really sparked your shift into real estate and later into the venture world?
It's a great question. To tell you that there was a big gathering, kind of like governing thought behind it. No, I'll be genuine. I think it was more of it just happened. I always joke people don't choose real estate, they end up in real estate because they just see the light, so to speak, right? And for me, when I was, to your point, working for McKinsey investment office, I was practically considering investment on my day to day for the partnership. And while I was exploring different asset classes, I came to realization pretty fast that out of the different options, real estate is the most fascinating one because, in my opinion, first of all, it's the largest one by far. We're talking about multi-trillion dollar. It's probably, I don't know, 20 to 30% of global GDP, no matter which country you're looking at. And yet, I think there is so much opportunity first, which I saw as a traditional investor, just buying, renovating, selling real estate. But then also obviously came to realization that the technology can basically create so much additional value and change the way we do it. So, just decided to go for it and left the big Wall Street corporate world and raised my real estate fund and happily did it for quite a while and had my, I would think, very interesting experience and rewarding experience, and I think that while doing it from 2017 to 2022, firsthand being an owner operator, I realized that there is a massive, massive, massive opportunity to introduce technology into this world. And I think that's where my idea to basically establish RE Angels came from.
So I guess you saw a lot of gaps in the industry, which help kind of create this RE Angels. fund. What type of gaps were you seeing for you to kind of say to yourself, okay, there's a lot of opportunity here?
Yeah. I think being an owner operator gave me an advantage of just experiencing firsthand everything to do with real estate, not just, say I was investing in real estate, but just using an Excel spreadsheet, but actually being in the field. And, anywhere from how we pay our rents, how the landlord's collecting it, how you are managing your books, how you managing your back office, how the entire property management is being done, how construction is being handled. Like, give you an example, walk to any construction site in New York City, mostly you'll see whiteboards, and you see like the managers basically managing their entire workflows on a whiteboard, probably like it used to be 50 years ago. Now, that doesn't resonate with me. Or you walk into a meeting and you have a macro in Excel, and all the stakeholders look at you like you invented the wheel, and it doesn't need to be like that. It's
Mm-hmm.
like getting reports in PDF, Excel if you are lucky, and if you even ask to do someone or something in SQL or a data table. I'm talking about pre-COVID, pre-Gen AI. That was like science fiction. So I think that doesn't make sense, because on the other hand, you have, as we said, tons of and massive amount of capital in this field. You kind of like have a lot of institutional players. You have a lot of like very, very, I would say, high net worth individuals, and all this wealth kind of like doesn't have the advantage that you see in all the different other verticals, right? And we talked about it back in Blueprint. For me, that was the aha moment, realizing that real estate is very resembling to me what the fintech or the financial world was a decade or so ago. It's kind of like, if I would have told you, I don't know, 20 years ago, that you'll be trading, you'll be doing your banking, you'll be sending money, you'll be managing your 401k through your phone, you'll be looking at me like I'm delusional. But today's table stakes, right? It's like, on the contrary, if I'll tell you, hey, Ryan, go to the bank and you need to do all of that, and you're like, why do I need to go to the bank? I can do everything on the phone. But more so, I think what happened in fintech is that banks are no longer the only option. You have all these kind of like new incumbents that are coming that were like literally startups, and they became almost table stakes, like startups that grew into even bigger than most of the traditional banks. So I think same will happen, or happening already as we speak, in real estate. It's kind of like the legacy players will be disrupted or will embrace the change. And I think from that, massive value will be created. And either you're capturing it and you're part of it, or you're just hearing about it in 10 years from now and you're like, I wish I've done something. So that was kind of like my 2 cents in it.
Along the lines of that, I think we're all in our industry for the same reasons you said. It's fantastic. It's one of the biggest, it's one of the biggest asset classes in the world. It's messy. It's exciting. It's all of those things. However, I think we can all agree that it is also one of the last industries to kind of catch up as it relates to digital transformation and implementation of technology. You talked about fintech in the financial industry and where it was 10 years ago. What is your prognosis or prediction, I'll say, as it relates to the real estate industry's likelihood that it will adopt technology and engage and go through a digital transformation to the extent that fintech has, or healthcare tech, or all of that? Because I know in conversations that I've had, there's a lot of skeptics within our industry. And so
Yeah.
I'd love to know what you think that likelihood is and that prognosis is for us to catch up, or even exceed
No,
other industries.
it's an excellent point, and I think you're raising a $1 million question, literally. I would start by saying, for me personally, it's not a question if it will happen. I'm 100% sure it will happen, but it's a
Mm-hmm.
question of when will it happen. And I think this is where can we debate, and it's a personal opinion. Obviously, I wish I had a crystal ball. I don't have. But I do think that the pace of acceleration and adoption where we are today is, I don't even know. I don't think it's twofold. It's probably 4 to 5-fold to where it was pre, let's say, the Gen AI and kind of like the, I don't know if I should say the word, but the revolution we are part of as we speak. Now, to your point, I think real estate is already changing as we speak. I see a lot of companies embracing those changes. And I think that actually real estate, because it was kind of like not adopting before technology, and I think like I always joke, it's like kind of like took a nap during the .com bubble and then kind of like missed the mobile kind of like transfer. Then it woke up a bit for crypto, but then it realized, no, it's not for me. But especially because it didn't went through all these waves of change and it didn't spend all those budgets and energy, there is a notion now of readiness to embrace the new kind of like agentic AI, the LLMs, those old technologies. And I think in some ways, I'm going to say something controversial, I think real estate is actually in the forefront of implementing different technologies that are being introduced right now. I know that from my conversation with my LPs and other real estate, I think substantial players that we are interacting with as part of our work in RE Angels, a lot of them, interestingly enough, are talking about it, thinking about it, and implementing like the entire LLMs, JGPT in their organizations, kind of like knowledge management, back office. I think there is a lot of interesting point. Now, would real estate going to become democratized to a point that you'll be able to buy a house in one click like Amazon in the next 5 years? I'm going to take a bet. I think not. But would a lot of operational efficiencies in the background will be sort of kind of introduced? I think yes, even in the near future. Like, let's take a simple kind of example. I don't know if you had a chance to had a real estate closing in the recent years or recently, but usually in New York City when you're trying to close, and even on a simple condo, it will be a big table, and in this table there will be, I'm not joking, about 10 different people
Yeah.
representing 10 different things. Hey, Ryan is
Yeah.
laughing.
Oh, I know.
And
It's wild.
and it's so wild that it's just like, and you're starting. So I experienced it, and I was like asking each person, what do you do and what do you do? And like, oh, that person represents the lender, and that person represents the escrow agent, and that person represents your lawyer, and that person the title company, and that person represents. And you ask yourself, in 2025, do you really need all those people present in a real estate transaction? And I think the answer is, of course not. So I think that will very fast, not disappear, but will be changed with something that makes things much faster. Due diligence can be made much faster. Internal processes within real estate companies can be much faster. And I'm actually excited because I think it's going to make the tenants experience much better, because now you're going to have data-driven decisions, and it's not just kind of like gut intuition feeling. So very long answer to your question, but I think we are living through it. It's already happening, and I see it as being adopted in the next 2 years and drastically changing how we do things, but in the background.
It's very interesting. So, given the fact that we were slower and dragged our feet a little bit, we didn't over automate with what we can call kind of legacy or pre-AI revolution tools, so to speak, that we would then have to undo or upgrade. And we literally can go from, where we are today straight to AI powered solutions, whatever they may be. So very interesting take.
Yeah, thank you. And I think it's almost like it goes in cycles, right? Real estate technology had at moments and had different like hypes and peaks. But I generally think that the technology fundamentals were not ready. Like, I think
Agreed.
if you are part of this world, you understand that the big problem is that there is tons and tons of information. I always joke like real estate doesn't require you nuclear science degree of kind
No,
of like
definitely not.
sophistication.
Right.
I even say from a math perspective, it's probably middle, I don't know, middle school, like basic math, but the amount of stakeholders, coordination, and what I like to call it's like level two insights, not level one. And I think
Mm-hmm.
because you need to connect the dots. And now I'm so excited because you have these technologies that can allow you to do it. And I think that's why all of a sudden real estate becoming a great candidate for all these technologies to come in and kind of like take lead.
No, absolutely. I joined a PropTech in 2018. And I think now if that we had the technical capabilities then that are present today, it would have been a completely different ball game, right? I mean, from a thesis perspective, well ahead of its time, aiming to solve a very real problem. But we only had so much we could do with at the time. So to your point, yeah, we're working in a totally different ball game right now.
Yeah, I want to touch on the verticals that you invest in, ConTech, FinTech, PropTech. Where do you see those areas being the most misunderstood or underfunded?
Huh. That's a For me personally, it's an easy question. I think out of those three verticals is construction technology. I think it's a very interesting field because kind of like if you look at real estate innovation, it's sort of like almost like focused on prop tech or property management. And I think that's why sometimes people interchangeably use those terms. They use
Yeah,
prop tech for real estate technology. And I think actually it's you're doing a bit of injustice. It's like real estate tech is much bigger because it was
100%.
easy, right? It was like we saw it from the property management softwares that kind of like established themselves and now they're like massive company publicly traded, and and then obviously the fintech of real estate kind of enjoyed its kind of fruits of the fintech kind of acceleration, and construction was like left behind, right? But on the other hand, construction, in my opinion, is extremely interesting and massive opportunity. It's close to 40 to 50% of the entire real estate budgets. It's If you look at just like the material science innovations that can be done. Like cement is like, I think it was invented 170 years ago. Show me one thing that we are using nowadays that was invented and haven't changed for the last 100 years, not say 170 years. And yet is one of the biggest polluter of CO2 emissions. And I think that's like the opportunity is substantial. I think it takes knowledge and I think it takes like expertise to really figure out what can you introduce there and how can you do it. But without getting too into the weeds, but we have massive housing shortage worldwide and also in the United States. I think the last stats I read was 6 million units. And it's not that like the population is decreasing, on the contrary, we're like increasing. So I think that the only way to solve it is by changing the traditional way we build houses. And that can happen with many different ways. And I'm just like, I think it's like extremely interesting, massive opportunity, misunderstood to your point by many general VCs. And we in RE Angels, we love construction technology and we're focusing and we have interesting pipeline of companies and innovations, and we invested already in a few companies and like Leaf and Tangible and Twix and all in this construction technology space.
There's so much opportunity. I agree with you on construction, especially on the sustainability side. We had a guest previously, Josh Hullum, who talked about mass timber usage
Yep.
and other ways that you could kind of lower your carbon footprint in order to design such a nicer industrial space or data center. So there's so much opportunity there, and I completely agree with you. One thing I would like to talk to you about is I feel in the construction side, you see a lot of pushback with people with wanting to adopt tech. Some people say it's probably because you need to do a top-down approach. Others say it's a bottom-up approach. How do you see that playing out in the near future?
So it's an interesting point. I can tell you that construction was kind of led traditionally by an call it an old guard mentality. So people that were, like construction workers, and obviously they were not the most tech savvy. The interesting dynamic that's happening now when we enter in kind of like this new era, all of a sudden it's all over you. So you go to a construction site, and some of my LP shared with me, and you see kind of like the construction workers saying, hey, why won't we just like ask ChatGPT what material we should use or which item we should order from this kind of like vendor list that we have. So it's almost like to your question, top down or bottom up, it's kind of like it's becoming almost like table stakes, and everybody almost like need it because they use it for everything else that they do in their day to day. So I think it's very hard to implement a top down approach of like, hey, I'm the developer, I'm now asking each and everyone from the GC to the subcontractor to the construction worker to use X. But on the other hand, if you seeing that the kind of like every person, every stakeholder in this chain needs and require it, and you managing to kind of like get it from there, eventually the developer wouldn't care. On the contrary, he would be happy or she would be happy, to do so and to follow. So kind of like I think we are getting into the right kind of like equilibrium, or in the right time that people are ready, and not to mention all the new generations that are going to step into the workforce and become construction workers. I actually see the future construction employee probably going to be a very tech savvy, graduating from college, kind of like having his tablet, managing bunch of robots, and probably managing bunch of processes. And it might be a cool job. But right now, ask every college kid, hey, do you want to work in a construction site? Probably you don't see a lot of hands raised up. But I think that there will be a shift, and there is an opportunity here to do something extremely interesting and on a very massive scale.
Alon, I never thought I would want to work on a construction site, but I do now after listening to you. I think it
I
sounds
should
really
be I
cool.
should I should be a recruiter.
Yeah, I
It
think
sounds
so.
very, very cool. So I'm very curious. You mentioned a future in which perhaps project managers or those on job sites are, college degrees, managing a team of robotics or whatnot. How do you envision the transition of those that are in the traditional jobs today? Maybe not the college degree or college graduates, right? Utilizing the, tools that we have today, doing things manually. Is there a world or a scenario in which these people are upskilled and there are new roles that could emerge for them, so to speak? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question, and I want to just put a small disclaimer that what I'm going to share now is just my personal opinion. I
Sure.
don't have any authority on the what's going to happen, but I think that I I don't have those kind of like apocalyptic, you know, future looking scenarios where massive amounts of people are laid off and people become obsolete. No, on the contrary, kind of like I I genuinely think that first of all, construction and the people who work behind every trade are extremely skilled, and it's extremely hard to master every trade in the job site. So
Mm-hmm.
like who further who have never stepped into a construction site and think it's easy peasy, it's completely not the case. On the contrary, I think those people have worked many years, and we should really honor and remember that and respect it, that when we're looking at the construction side, we're looking at the building, there's a lot of like hours and energy and effort put into it. Now I think that technology will allow them to have superpowers. And this is how I look at AI personally. Those all those new wave of like tools that are coming is just making us more efficient and faster and better. And I think that it will require us to retrain and let all those kind of like old generation to adopt into kind of like a new workflows. I think that I'm going to give you an analogy. I have a startup I invested named Daisy, and Daisy are disrupting the property management field. Now, what they are doing is they not just created a technology that replaces the human factor, the super, that needs to be in the building, but they're just allowing that person, and they basically didn't took only college grads, they took the same amount of property, or so the same property managers that were in the old type of buildings and the old property management companies, and retrains them into their new workflows. And now they can just do more and they can be faster. So it's kind of like, I think the companies that will succeed are the companies that will internalize it and be smart enough to leverage it and basically create a scenario where 1+1 = 3. Every person feels that they are still needed. And I still think that in the end of the day, even if you have robots, you need someone who knows the trade, but they can manage it more carefully. Or now, instead of being on their phone and trying to figure out where is this item needs to go, there will be almost like a co-pilot that's going to say, hey, I found the item, just go to that section in the building, pick it up, and it's just going to save time. And then that individual can be much more productive in their work, finish their work faster, and maybe get even more work and more jobs. And, eventually financially, it will be more rewarding to them. So I'm excited. I think it's going to do a lot of good rather than bad.
This is a theme. This is a point I've been having a lot of conversations with folks about, right? Where we envision what AI can do with the capacity of work that we have today, right? But we need to think about that capacity is going to expand exponentially. And so people are worried about losing the job they're doing today, but the focus is on only the capacity that we have today. So there will be greater capacity to do even more that we probably can't even envision yet or think about yet, but that people will still be needed because there's going to be so much work that we're going to be doing. And so I think I'm glad you raised that. I think it's a very important point, and I think it's very critical to show how multifaceted this conversation needs to be about AI.
Correct, and eventually, I think it will be part of the evolution. Yes, there will be unfortunately some people who might lose their job because they won't be able to adapt. But we saw it through history over and over again, right? When we have the Industrial Revolution, and when people also stop using horse and carriage and start using engines. And it's like, I'm assuming that the people who were training the horses were much less needed, and the people who knew how to fix the engine all of a sudden became more in demand. So nothing here is scary. Just the same thing happening, just on a different terms.
Exactly. I know. I always talk about when there was electricity, what happened to the candle makers, right? I mean, it's like, we can have this conversation all day long, but exactly. This isn't new. We've been here before as a society.
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct. And I love what you said. It's exactly about freeing and expanding capacity. And if now one subcontractor was able to finish a job in 2 weeks with AI and other kind of like technologies, they'll be able to finish the job in 50% of the time. So they'll be able to finish it in a week, and they'll be able to do now 2 jobs at the same time. And eventually that will lead, to your point, to faster completions, and deadlines will be accelerated, and eventually everybody will be happier out of it. So that's it's just lead, in my opinion, to much better world.
Yeah, speaking about AI and how you're able to get things done faster and at a much cheaper rate. So you're seeing a lot of these tech companies being able to use applications to help them build products faster and cheaper, right? So, with that being said, how do you see the traditional VC model being affected by this?
That's a that's a good one, Ryan. I give you.
Thanks.
I don't know if you noticed, but I was actually thinking about doing a LinkedIn post about it, but you kind of like already asked, so I'm going to share here. In the last, I think, few weeks, there have been overflowing posts of the VC model is dead, VCs are irrelevant, yada yada yada, and they give you some quotes and showcasing how like the big almighties and mega funds are kind of like moving and changing their models. And I think it's all just like click bites. It's like
Yeah.
nothing is dead. It's changing. The
Yeah.
evolution is happening to the VC exactly as it's happening to the world and exactly as it's happening to the startups. So to your point, now in the new era, VCs doesn't need or not required to be so labor intensive. You don't need 20 people with analysts to do research and to kind of like justify all those massive amount of fees. I think it's just like this model, yes, probably slowly starting to be less and less favorable. And we're seeing a model where exactly as a startup now can create an MVP within probably a few weeks and a few prompts and a few good AI tools, the same thing happening with a VC. You can probably do a lot of diligence, a lot of research, and a lot of back office with agents. So you can be much more lean. And I think that it's interestingly, in my opinion, that you see more and more the smaller VCs, such as RE Angels, starting to emerge and starting to kind of like get more competitive because guess what? I right now can go to ChatGPT, put deep search function, and probably have the same result as if I would have hired a consulting team back at the day and paid them millions of dollars to do market research for me. And I can get it in 10 minutes. Now that's just like one workflow. Let's talk about all the different workflow and what I did in RE Engines. I basically build agents. I have agents for every workflow and task that I have that works and produce kind of like the work on my behalf. So I believe that right now where VC is required to change is specialization. I think that VCs are no longer just capital. They need to really have an ability to be a strategic partner and help with knowledge that otherwise the founder would not have on his own, or relationships or understanding. And I think that the generalist model, like, hey, I'm sitting on the ivory tower and I'm the smartest person in the world, come to me and I'll write you a check and I'll tell you exactly how you need to do your startup in cyber and your startup in the pharma world and your startup in the ed tech space and it's right in the advertising. That's just like it's very hard to justify. But if you have been doing real estate for 20 years and you know how the dynamic works and you can actually add value to your founder, I think this is what matters. And I think that's what both LPs and founders are looking for right now. And I see a lot of, in my opinion, smaller emerging kind of like lean VCs appearing because in my opinion also, the benefit of having kind of like months of diligence and investment committees and taking your time to make a decision, they're also going to become almost a competitive factor.
Mm-hmm.
Because if everything is changing so fast and startups literally can build a product and generate $1 million ARR within a few months with no budget, then they need really fast to get funded to capture and do the scaling. But if they're gonna now wait and for months to come until the money gonna hit their account, they might lose their entire edge and the entire market. So I think that kind of gonna lead into very fast decision making, very agile models, and kind of like a different type, new area of kind of like lean VCs, so to speak.
What type of qualities do you see now these agile VCs needing to have? Like how are you going to be able to differentiate yourself to now get the companies to come to you and say, we want to work with you because of X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, this is a this is a secret sauce, so to speak.
Right.
But you know, first of all, most important is obviously your looks. No, I'm joking. But
Well, you got
but
an edge there.
nah. But joke, thank you. But joke aside, is I think that founders want you to save them time. Founders are usually not necessarily the subject matter expert in the field they're trying to disrupt. So if they have an opportunity either to speak with you as a VC or as you to make the introduction to someone who's been doing that for an extended amount of time and save them the mistakes and kind of like save them time, for me, in my opinion, that's the currency of the future. That's much more important than the $1 million you're going to give them. Can you save them time to market? Can you make them the introduction to the first clients who they're going to establish kind of like their presence and break the glass ceiling, right? Like I can speak about real estate, but I'm sure it's the same in other industries. When you are coming with a new product, no one wants to be the first guy to give you a shot, right? Everybody wants to wait and see what the other person will do. And kind of like my analogy is always like, no one wants to let someone else to learn how to shave on their neck, right? They want to someone else to go like learn how to shave on their neck to get a few of those like, bleeding out and then come and kind of like serve them. So the same thing is here is like, if you as a VC are able to let your founders get the first clients, get the first buildings, kind of like get the first customers or help them to figure out who they should go after. It's the go-to market in real estate is extremely convoluted, extremely fragmented. I always joke that it's like probably one of the most complex. And you all know it. It's like, go figure who you're selling your product in a building, right? To the landlord, to the lender, to the tenant, to the property manager, to the asset manager. Like there are so many decision makers, and good luck figuring it out if you're not from the field. But if you're able to go to the founder and say, hey, I know exactly who you need to sell. I know exactly how you need to focus it. That should be your pricing. That should be kind of like your strategy. That for me, the winning source or factor. And I think what we pride ourselves in RE Angels that not just myself, it's not a team of one. We're like 18 extremely experienced individuals in all the different verticals of real estate, from commercial to residential, construction, brokerage, real estate finance, and the list go on and on. And the idea is to all come together, and each time you have a founder who's trying to tackle and disrupt a specific niche or a specific vertical, we are able to match them with kind of like the expert who've been doing what they're trying to do for 20 years. And I think that's kind of like our competitive edge. And to your question, what's required from VCs nowadays?
This might be part of your special sauce as well, but give us a little taste. What trends are you guys keeping an eye on right now in real estate technology? And also, what do you think people are sleeping on?
I think that first and foremost, we spoke a lot today about AI and generative AI and LLMs, but we need to remember something need to kind of like provide its capability, and that's something called data centers. And I think that data centers obviously is something that all over the news nowadays, becoming the hottest kind of alternative asset class within real estate.
Yeah.
But within RE Engines, what I think a lot of people might be missing is all the adjacent technologies that are required to support the data center. And let's not forget, data centers need energy. And in order to have this massive adoption, you need massive amount of energy, which I don't think right now the United States and probably globally ready for by far. So a very long answer to a short question, but I think that within data center and adjacent technologies, there is extremely interesting startups that trying to take different kind of like pieces of that pie and disrupt that piece to create more efficiencies. And I personally, I love those type of strategies because this is where no one else is looking. And that can exponentially grow extremely fast. Just imagine if you manage to boost your data center efficiency by even 5%. We're talking about billions of dollars that you can create to the hyperscalers and to the co-location, so to speak. So that's one. I think the second trend that I'm kind of looking into or excited about is the entire notion of digitizing the spaces we are living in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of like real estate, fundamentally, it's a box, right? It's like we all kind of like we have the box for walls, roof, and a floor, but we are slowly getting into in my opinion, an era where everything will slowly sort of being monitored and being kind of like tracked, and there will be a digital footprint that will help us make better decisions. So how we digitize our spaces in terms of kind of how we, from the simple kind of examples of can we take now schematics, and when we are planning or buying apartment, can we visualize it into a 3D dimension kind of like model that we walk through? Can we now, obviously, which table stakes operate our house with our voice, with Alexa and Siri and all those kind of like voice agents? But can it take another level of basically in commercial buildings, how we utilize our utilities and how we better optimize the spaces, and the list is long, but I think this entire notion of how we are now becoming smarter and better with the spaces that we have, because spaces are limited, that's extremely interesting for me. Now, last but not least, I look at in real estate what's called tech-enabled services. So take a traditional service model that has been very labor intense, and thank God in real estate we have plenty of those. And
That's true.
now, I like that you're smiling, Ryan, because you're talking from, I can see, personal experience, and take all those different services and try to basically merge technology into them and see
Mm-hmm.
how you can boost your margin, boost your efficiencies into a very strong, competitive edge. And I think that with economy of scale, pouring technology into it is becoming very interesting. Like, I'll give you an example. A company we invested in called PestShare. PestShare are essentially providing pest services like an Uber to landlords. And this is a niche. This is a service that no one saw to disrupt, and they saw it before everybody else. And we're very happy they grew substantially, probably one of our fastest growing companies, and they're taking the market by a storm, right? And the reason is because you take a traditional model that's been mainly kind of like dominated by moms and pop original player, and you now enable them to go from very low margin to a very high efficiency margin, almost tech-like margin. And by the way, that's not just me. Insight Partners, in my opinion, put it as their North Star for the next few years to invest in those tech-enabled services. There is massive amounts of capital now pouring into those, like what they call roll-ups 2.0. So kind of like, how do you take a lot of small businesses, combine them together, and improve efficiency, so to speak? And I think that's in real estate, there will be many, many of those examples.
Alone, when you're not building companies, raising capital, and fathering two kids under 5, what do you do to stay grounded? What are your hobbies or interests?
First of all, I wouldn't lie. Sometimes it feels like a circus with everything going on. But no, but to your question, I, in the last few years, started to practice yoga. I found it like really helping me more than the physical aspect, but to your point, kind of like to clear my thought and my head. It's almost like I was joke. Remember, probably the young generation did not remember it so much, but when the computer was just introduced, they used to call like the 386 or 486 series. It was just like this old computer. And if the computer was on for too long, you had to like reboot it in order for it to like go back working. It's not happening today. But for me, I feel like me practicing yoga is almost the same. Like if my brain works for too long and I don't reset it into something that helps you kind of like to almost like offload your thinking and reboot, it's very hard. Highly recommend, but that's one thing. Obviously, I'm also trying to stay active physically, and kind of like snowboarding and trying to like do my healthy share of like running and swimming and so on. So I think pretty much the ordinary, nothing too extreme.
So, Alon, I have to ask you, if you weren't in VC, where would we find you? Would you be on a mountain snowboarding? Would you be in a band because we know you play guitar, or would you be somewhere utterly unexpected? Where would we find Alon?
I think I would have perhaps opened a coffee shop.
That's so charming.
Okay.
I like, because generally, that's a dream I always had. It's just like, because I think in a coffee shop, you can kind of like do everything together. First of all, like host your friends, you can play live music. I like coffee and bringing people together. And essentially, I think I probably would have gravitated to still doing technology investment within my coffee shop. So, because
Right.
I really enjoy and I feel lucky doing what I like. And I generally say when I wake up in the morning, I don't feel like I'm going to work. I feel like I'm doing what I love doing. Now, Nadine, maybe one day I'm also going to wake up with a brilliant idea and I'll become a founder myself. But for the time being, I feel like supporting the brilliant founders that we invested in is probably more rewarding. I feel like I'm part of every company we're investing in. I don't know if every VC person will tell it, but I'm get very excited of every small win they are. I get extremely kind of like sad or kind of I wouldn't say sad, but like I take it to heart every time that something doesn't goes well for them. I feel them. It's a very tough journey. And it's a very kind of like lonely journey. And I think our job as an investor is to be there for them in the tough times and not just celebrate the good times. And I hope that most investors do have this mindset as we do.
Well, they're very lucky to have you.
Yeah.
But my last question for you is, what's your favorite coffee?
In New York?
Anywhere.
Well, my favorite coffee is in a coffee shop in Cartagena in Colombia, but assuming that it's hard to get to that, probably here in Williamsburg, where I live, my favorite is Partners. I'm a big fan of this coffee chain. Highly recommended, and they didn't pay me anything, so sorry for the advertising.
Oh no, I'm thinking about going there soon and check it out.
I was like, I could use a cup of coffee right now. I wish I could go to Partners in Williamsburg, but I can't. So
please, when you're ever in the hood, coffee on me.
Done. Well, Alon, this was a fantastic interview. Thank you so much for your insights, and your empathy truly for your founders comes across very strongly. Your founders are very lucky to be able to have RE angels on their side. So thank you so much for joining us today, Alon. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Alon.
Thank you for the kind words. It's been great. I love the conversation and looking forward for our next one.
Likewise. So with that, please be sure to stay tuned, our listeners, for our recap after this brief word from our sponsor.
Hey there, CRE Unplugged fam. We would like to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, the game changers over at HILO, the customer experience platform for buildings that's turning heads in the real estate world.
That's right. Can we talk about how HILO is transforming the way we manage properties and create unforgettable experiences? Ryan, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about HILO?
Well, Nadine, it's all about reducing friction in property management. HILO is like the magic wand that makes everything seamless and efficient. Say goodbye to those time-consuming tasks and hello to streamlined operations and communications.
Efficiency is crucial, but what about personalized experiences? HILO takes it to the next level with a vision to tailor each interaction to the needs and preferences of its customers.
And let's not forget the community aspect. HILO builds vibrant, connected communities. It's fostering a sense of belonging and togetherness.
Now, here's something that truly sets HILO apart: their commitment to advancing ESG initiatives. They're not just about buildings, they're about making a positive impact on the environment. That's a win-win for everyone.
So, to our listeners out there, if you're ready to elevate your properties, digitize and enhance customer experience, and maximize satisfaction, HILO is the answer. Please visit hiloapp.com for more information. That's HILOAPP.com. What another great conversation we had. I'm so happy that we got to have Alon on the podcast. Nadine, can you share some of your thoughts?
I learned a lot from Alon today. And I got to say, I'm so impressed with him. He's such a great guy to begin with, but,
Yeah.
He's running a fund and he's essentially a team of one, right? And he's, he talked a lot. He's kind of like drinking his own Kool-Aid, right? You're looking for founders. You want to look for founders, that have vision, that have empathy with the problem that it is that you're trying to solve, that are quick and all that. And he's showing that he's leveraging innovation and AI and tools to do the same thing. And we talked about how that's impacting how they operate and invest. And I got to say, I really learned a lot from the guy, and I'm very inspired by him.
Yeah, I think you're hearing a lot of chatter being talked about on LinkedIn about AI. I think like
Yeah.
people have kind of like reached like their optimal level of listening and learning from it.
Yeah.
And I saw a post the other day of someone just writing AI and it got thousands of likes. So I
Yeah.
think people understand the humor around it.
Yeah.
But you see Alone and he's using AI agents, he's using different capabilities and tools, and he's able
Yeah.
to build this micro fund that's been really successful and getting a competitive advantage against the big players. So really kudos to him on all that. I have to others say that, in terms of construction tech, I think he's kind of understanding
Yeah.
the advantages that you have with concrete and be able to use more sustainable concrete in order to build. That's kind of a tool or
Hmm.
something that you're not seeing being done by a lot of people
Right.
because they're probably afraid to do so and they're so used to what materials they've been using in the past.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of what we're hearing a lot on the sidelines.
Yeah. I found his insights on the construction side very inspiring and insightful, especially how predicting that, a lot of the manual jobs that are done today will be done perhaps by college degree holding individuals in the future, managing perhaps a team of robots. But that does not mean that we're still not going to have, people doing manual work on a construction site, right? It's just how much of work can be done by the same team, right? And whatnot. And I found that conversation very necessary right now, as there is so much of a negative apocalyptic tone to a lot of the conversations we have about how technology or AI or whatever it is going to impact the future of our industry. So to be able to kind of have this more multifaceted conversation, illustrating how it's going to really increase the capacity of what our teams are going to be able to do and faster and more. I just thought it was very necessary right now. And I'm really glad that Alon touched upon that.
What do you think about his hot take where he says that he thinks real estate technology is actually being adopted faster than the other sectors right now?
I Yeah, I wish we had a little bit more time to go into that one. I'm skeptical. I think it's a loaded statement. I do think, to his point, that perhaps as an industry we might be more better suited and positioned to start adopting technology more from this point forward, going forward, because as we're not as saddled with as many legacy systems as other industries. So maybe
Yeah.
we have a smaller ball of rubber bands, so to speak, to undo. But whether we're adopting it faster than other industries, I'm skeptical. I mean, the guy's out there, he's seeing it. So, but I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, I agree with you. I think we're long roads ahead before we see a lot of adoption happening
Yeah.
at a fast pace. But I think we're getting there, and
Yeah.
the future is bright. And I really hope that people start seeing the light, because
Yeah.
there's only so much that you and I can do to help
Well,
with that
well, we're
journey.
trying. We're trying. We're doing our small part, Ryan. We're doing our small part.
Yeah, doing our small part. Well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you so much to Alon Gorbonos, general partner and founder of RE Angels. Please rate, subscribe, and review wherever you get your podcasts.
And if you have any questions that you want us to answer on air, or just to complain to us, you can email us at info@creunplugged.com or reach us at our website, creunplugged.com. See you next time. And until then, keep your convos real and unplugged.